Welcome to Real Estate Coaching Radio, starring award-winning real estate coaches and #1 international best-selling authors, Tim and Julie Harris. This is the #1 daily radio show for realtors looking for a no BS, authentic, real-time coaching experience. What's really working in today's market, how to generate more leads, make more money, and have more time for what you love in your life. And now your hosts, Tim and Julie Harris.
3, 2, 1, and we're back, Julie. Today, of course, is April the 21st, and we're going to start out today by reading a very nice email message we got from a coaching client, podcast listener, and a future EXP Libertas member as well.
Indeed.
And we did not ask his permission to read this, so when you're reading this, Jules, make sure you do not read his last name.
I will not.
But his first name is Mike. And Mike, you did send this a little while ago, and I apologize that Julie and I did not thank you quick enough before. And the title of your email was "You Really Made an Impression," and your email made an impression on Julie and I too. We are just saving it for the perfect time to use it on the podcast, which we have for reasons that listeners are about to understand. But before we get to the email from Mike, I'll remind all of you, it's not too late for you guys to download and complete your 2021 Real Estate in Life Business Plan. All you have to do is text 2021 to 47372. Text 2021 to 47372. And when you do, we're going to text you back a link. And with that link, you can download your Real Estate Treasure Map along with Think and Grow Rich for Real Estate, which is Napoleon Hill's public domain version of the book Think and Grow Rich. And we've added a lot of real estate content in there as well. Both of these books are free. And yes, I know I had somebody, Julie, tell me that they bought Real Estate Treasure Map on Amazon and wanted us to give them the money back because of the fact that we're giving it away for free. Right? Guys, Julie and I have been saying on this podcast for years, don't buy the book on Amazon. We'll just give it to you for free. So just go ahead and download it. So text 2021 to 47372, text 2021 to 47372, and we'll text you back a link to download both books. So Mrs. Harris?
Yes, indeed. So let's get on to Mike's lovely email, which we greatly appreciate. Now, Mike lives in the northwestern corner of the country, we'll say, and he knows who he is. Mike writes, "Hey, Julie, this has been on my mind, and I thought I would mention it. As you may or may not remember, I have not been an agent for even a full month, but have used your guys' material and already have 2 listings. That's so awesome. There was a Clubhouse meeting a couple weeks ago where I mentioned this, and Tim was talking with me about this and some of my next steps. At the end, he mentioned something that I have not forgotten and I really appreciated. He said he was proud of me. It's funny how something so simple and you would think maybe uncomfortable to say with grown-ups can have such an impact on someone. I came from a good background and family, and yet no one understands the work that I have to go through over the last month. I know you guys do, so the fact that he said that coming from your background really meant something to me. I thought it important to let you guys know how that comment made an impact on me." And then Mike goes on to say, "One of my listings is going on to market next week, and I've got a few questions on open houses. What's the best time of day to have one? Should I do one on the first day it's listed? Should I do a neighborhood only before the full open house or invite everyone all at once? Should I only hold it for 1 or 2 hours?" All great questions. And seriously, Mike, we really appreciate what you said here, and absolutely we're proud of you. I mean, brand new, licensed less than a month. 2 listings. How many times on this podcast have we said you do not have to wait, you don't have to toil away, especially in today's market, with all those buyers and all the buyer drama and all the buyer stress. You can be just like Mike and take listings right out of the gates.
Do you remember in the start of Lord of the Rings when the little hobbits were getting together trying to decide, whether they had the guts to actually go to the fires of Mordor and throw in the ring and the whole thing, right? I mean, that's basically what it's like when you're deciding to work with buyers in this market. You're going to walk around along the way.
You know what you're signing up for.
Miles and miles, years and years of trouble and turmoil where you're constantly getting attacked by all sorts of hobgoblins and whatever the other things are, right? Constantly. That's what working with buyers is. And you don't have to basically suffer those indignities to learn how to be a listing agent. You can be a listing agent the second the ink is dry on your license. You just have to basically, know how to be a listing agent. And that's what we teach in our coaching program. You guys need to take this seriously because frankly, the buyer agent business model Look, it's going to come back when the market shifts, but right now it's effectively on life support. In many markets, you're seeing buyer agent commissions drop to less than 1%. In some cases, we're hearing the buyer's agents aren't getting paid anything. So you need to be paid. You need to be very careful where you're going to put your best energies. And I know the go-to, advice that most new agents get is, start working with buyers. Well, we're here to tell you that yes, you're going to be working with buyers. It's an ancillary benefit occasionally when you choose to. As a result of being a listing agent. So absolutely positively put your best efforts towards being a listing agent. And those of you who have been in production for a long time, been in the business for a long time, and you're now finding that it does seem like the business is harder. It does seem like, everything is harder. You're just experiencing lots of headwinds just trying to get a transaction together. It's because you're working too much on the buyer side of the business. That's why. The buyer side of the business is getting harder. The listing side of the business is getting easier. Once you learn how to get the listings, do you really think it takes any effort to get a listing sold in this marketplace? It doesn't. So the effort is always spent on the proactive lead generation, the pre-qualifying, the presenting. Those three things are the only three skills that you really truly need to master in real estate. Everything else you can choose not to do or you can delegate. So what we're going to talk about today is we're going to go to how to monetize, not just sit open houses, and top 5 reasons why, especially in a market like this, you should absolutely love open houses.
Yes, absolutely. And in fact, now more than ever, because there's such enthusiasm for real estate right now, now more than ever, this is a very legitimate, very predictable and duplicatable spoke in your lead generation wheel. So take this seriously. And Tim, you were talking about buyer's agents versus listing agents. I saw the funniest meme online this morning, and it was like, if you imagined first like this beautiful Persian cat that's all fluffy and, just looks happy and pretty, and that's the listing agent. And then next to it is, how especially long-haired cats look after they've been through the bathtub. And so their hair's all screwed up. They look insane. They're hissing. Their teeth are out. They look like they've just been through the ringer. And that, of course, is the buyer side.
My favorite one is the same idea, but it's a beautiful Barbie versus one that looks like it's been roasted over a fire pit.
I know. Her hair's all screwed up.
Basically,
makeup's a mess.
It's essentially showing I remember the Barbie one was this is what a listing agent looks like, and this is what a buyer's agent looks like.
These are great.
It is true, though.
Very true. So take this spoke seriously, and we're going to do the top 5 reasons to love open houses on today's podcast. This will be a multi-part series. So point 1, yes, serious buyers do go through open houses. In fact, 20% of them are going to open houses so they can actually make a decision this weekend, be the agent to write the contract with them. Yes, they seem like buyers, but guess what? They're sellers in buyers' clothing. Here's a script. How many times have we said this? Which home in the area do you plan on selling? Memorize that, internalize it, utilize it. This should be one of your leading scripts in today's market, especially during open houses.
Now, here's the thing. Julie's statistic of 20%, that's true in an overall grander market. But the reality of it is that if you're working in think of it this way, listeners, you have first-time buyers, you have a move-up house, and then sometimes, depending on the affluence and, how much people like housing, you might have far more, maybe 3 or 4 subsequent move-ups for their primary residence. This doesn't account for vacation homes, and this doesn't account for rental properties. But generally speaking, traditionally, you have the first-time buyer house, you have the move-up house, you have the move-up after that house. And then if they're affluent or if they're wanting to, upwardly mobile types, then there might be another 2 or 3 moves up over that. Mm-hmm. So depending on where you're holding this house open, if you're on one of the maybe beyond really the upper, if you're just holding a first-time home buyer house open, don't be surprised if the people don't have anything to sell. If you're holding the move-up house open, then you're looking at 20% of those people that walk in are going to have houses to sell. But you go much beyond that, virtually everyone's going to have a house to sell first. So you got to think logically here. And now I'll tell you, just as Julie was reading that point, what I'm sure most of you are thinking is you're going to stymie yourself or hold yourself back from holding houses that are open that are more expensive than the house that you live in. Mm-hmm. And you've got to be really, really careful. One of the easiest mistakes that all of you make is believing that people that are in a similar price range as you are the only ones you can work with. Where the reality of it is people are pretty much people. Housing is pretty much housing. And it doesn't matter if it's a really multi-million-dollar house or a first-time home buyer house. For the most part, people say and feel and act the same exact ways. Now, obviously, the more sophisticated buyer or seller, they're going to have more sophisticated buyer and seller needs, but you can learn on the job. So don't hold yourself back and only hold houses open that are in a similar price range as you.
Level.
And now I'll go as far to the other side of the spectrum. If you're in a market And I know there's not very many markets like this where you're living in a really expensive market and all you're used to selling is really expensive stuff. If that really expensive stuff isn't selling, you might actually want to go down to whatever the feeder neighborhood is for the neighborhood that you live or the neighborhood that you primarily sell in, or that's maybe not selling very quick now. Because generally speaking, one neighborhood feeds the other. People will go from the Oakhurst subdivision as their first-time home buyer area, and they'll move up to Smithville. And then Smithville, people generally speaking will move to three different communities, right? People generally speaking are going to stay within the same 25-mile radius of where they presently live. So just think logically here. If your mind is saying I can only hold houses open that are sort of like the neighborhood I live in, and maybe you're in one of the first three brackets, do yourself a favor and move up the market if you have the opportunity to, because then you obviously have a higher sale price, but you also then are going to have a higher likelihood of having multiple transactions. And again, the opposite is true as well.
That's right. And, we'll talk about how to become more comfortable in maybe an uncomfortable neighborhood for you, right? So one of the things that you can do, and this is in our how to monetize an open house, which we'll do in either tomorrow or the next podcast, is to actually walk the neighborhood, do some previewing, know what the stats are. Is it hot or is it not? How many days in the market? What's actually pending? Is it on the upward swing or not?
Well, let's talk about what we did. When Julie and I sold real estate, we started selling we were selling in an area called Clintonville, Ohio, where the average sale price now is, I'm guessing, probably $250,000 or $350,000. When we lived there, the average sale price in our overall market when we sold real estate, this was the 90s, was like $220,000.
Yeah.
Where what we were selling, the average sale price was, and for our first year, was probably like $110,000, $120,000, right? So that's how much things have doubled.
Lots of first-time buyer houses, little cracker boxes,
Mostly first-time buyer houses. But then Julie and I quickly gravitated, because we figured out what we just told you is true, to more expensive stuff. You can hold a first-time home buyer house open, you're going to get one sale. You hold a house open that's more expensive, you're going to get potentially multiple sales. But then Julie and I decided, well, you know what? We want to move completely up market. And one of the most expensive, desirable areas in central Ohio at the time was this area called New Albany Country Club, which is probably still one of the most beautiful communities I've ever been to on planet Earth. So we wanted to live there, but we didn't know anybody there. We were completely and totally a fish out of water. We didn't have any
geographically, economically,
social connections. We didn't go to the same schools.
No.
Julie and I are basically, meat and potatoes people, and those people out there are caviar. They go to Paris in the summer kind of thing. So what we did is we would start every single weekend for months. We would go out there and we'd walk the neighborhoods. We'd walk on the walking paths. We'd get to know essentially what it felt like to be there, so we felt comfortable. And then we started hunting. Guess what? Expireds. And then we started picking up inventory. And after not too long, we moved there. These things are all possible for you guys. Even if you come from very, very humble beginnings like Julie and I did, you can ascend in real estate as fast as you choose to allow yourself, because there really are no limitations. Once you have the skill set, this should be your big takeaway mentally, right? Once you have the skill set to work with sellers, you can move not only different places in your community, in your city, in your state, but you can move to different parts of the country, because the skill set that we teach you is transferable. If you're buying leads and everything you're doing is basically predicated on passive lead generation, like direct mail, let's say, for example, you move from that market, you're going to lose all the opportunities that may have eventually come from, your passive lead generation efforts. You guys get the point here? So once you have the skill set's transferable. Here, I'll put it in a different way. If you were a doctor, let's say, you can pick whatever specialization it is. You don't have to stay in Columbus, Ohio your whole life, because that specific profession and your specific specialization could be needed anywhere. So if you want to live in Hawaii, you can basically say, you know what, I don't want to be a dentist in Columbus, Ohio anymore. I'll just choose to be a dentist in Hawaii. And then you can get a job out there and work for an existing practice or start your own, because your skill set is transferable. Your real estate skill set that most agents have been told to develop is not transferable, because you guys are not building businesses that are essentially skills based. And this all goes back to the thing I hope all of you carry with you, because it's very profound. At least I think it is, right? At the end of the day, when you're building a castle, when you're building a mansion, when you're building, that and the house and the mansion represent your business and your livelihood, don't do it on land that you don't own. So if you're building something that's going to be, hopefully take care of you in the future, and your foundation is basically social networking, marketing, buying leads, and all that stuff, you don't control any of that. And at any one time, you could just lose control of all of it. Not true if you have the skill set.
Exactly. So don't be intimidated by the more expensive stuff. They want the same thing everyone else does. So point number 2, it's a great place to meet, guess who? The nosy, soon to list neighbors. So don't just assume that everybody walking in your open house is just some random buyer walking in. They at the very least have a high likelihood of having something to sell, and they might actually be the very next door neighbors or across the street neighbors. Why do they do that? They're seeing what's the price of the house, what do you get for the money, what's the activity, what's this agent about, are they proactive, are they lazy sitting on the couch watching a football game while everybody wanders around the house? What's the deal?
We need to make sure that we didn't grow your 20% point here is, guys, this is sort of a
That's different than what you were talking about.
I understand. Okay. I understand. But here's an important point, that the people that are driving neighborhoods, when they're just strictly talking about buyers at this point, those are your best leads that you're ever going to get. The worst leads that you're ever going to get are internet leads, because those are the people that are just getting ready to get started. They're sitting around, watching football, open up their iPhone, hop on Realtor.com, or just looking for listings just for the sake of burning through commercials, right? So that's what's going to happen when you're focusing on those types of leads. Why you would pay for those leads is beyond me. What happens then is the person's serious about buying a home. They then focus on neighborhoods like we were just talking about. And then what they start doing, especially in a market like this, is they start driving the neighborhoods. Mm-hmm. They start looking for signs. They start looking for, guess what? Open house signs. Your best leads are always going to be your best buyer leads. And again, depending on what your sale price is or the price of the house that you're holding open, your best potential seller leads are always going to be from doing direct face-to-face interaction with, obviously through open houses. Open houses in a huge buyer's market aren't nearly as effective because there's too much for the buyers to even take in. Yeah. In a market like this, open houses are gold. You could do an open house, and we're going to go through the rest of these points in a second. And by the way, what's it called for our coaching clients? What's the open house system we have on our coaching on Premier?
How to monetize an open house.
Okay, and so the how to monetize an open house system is something that basically is a complete A to Z system, and how they actually
even have coaching calls about it.
Okay, good. Members. So that's for Premier coaching members. Mm-hmm. Okay, so if you guys want to get the whole system, we're just going over the highlights, obviously, to get you motivated to at least consider doing some open houses.
All right, so they do kill it in this market. I mean, we've had coaching clients with over 200 people lined up out the door.
I know.
Who have had to really engineer how it's going to go, get an assistant at the door, make sure they've got a sign-in app.
It's awesome.
I mean, it is awesome. So point number 3, it leads me to point number 3. Build your future business through making maximum contacts in minimum time. I mean, what's the number one thing you guys complain about? I can't find a phone number. Well, this is maximum contacts in minimum time. It's efficient prospecting when you do it right. You'll be amazed at how much future business you're going to create by doing consistent, well-executed opens. So you remember we used to have people say, of course, in our pre-qual script, we would always ask them, how did you come across us or something like that? And they'd say, well, you were the only person that was nice to me in an open house I went to, 90 days ago. They do remember. Some of them will pop immediately, but the other ones that you have treated professionally, you ask your good open house scripted questions, you follow up, they're going to remember you for that.
One of the things you could do also is to gather information. There's all kinds of electronic ways to do it, but a simple, almost completely passive way to do it is have a good old-fashioned fishbowl, and you're going to be doing some kind of raffle at the end of the open house, or maybe it's the end of something like that, and you're going to give something away of value, and it could be whatever you determine to be. Like you're going to draw 10 people's names from the raffle bowl, and each are going to get a Starbucks card, or you can do something like where you're going to give away something of value. But the point is when they walk in, not everyone or very few people are going to have business cards, but you could have pre-written, simple, maybe cut a bunch of 3x5 cards in half, have pins sitting there so they can write their names and their phone numbers down, and they just drop it in the raffle jar, something like that. Again, I know there's electronic things that work as well, but that requires people actually doing more touching of things, which they're going to be a little apprehensive of. So if you give them an iPad, they're going to be weird about putting in their information. So the good old-fashioned raffle jar and a piece of paper is going to be a great way.
And maybe pens they can keep. You could do that.
Yeah, there you go. How about pens they can keep with your branding information on it? Just don't assume they're ever going to call you from your branding information, right. But it is something that's effective. All right, go ahead, Julie.
Yes. All right. So point number 4, the seller whose home you're holding open will love you when you do your open house the right way. Keep your sellers happy. They do expect open houses. And this was from our editor, give up the fight and do them right. Giving up the fight. Okay, so agents will not want to do open houses sometimes. And that's a terrible conversation. I remember, when we had lots of listings, we had to say, yes, of course we do them on a rotational basis so that one seller doesn't expect you to do it weekend after weekend.
When you and I were when we were active listing agents, so we had a minimum of 20 listings, and sometimes we had as many as 60 listings.
Yeah, so you can't do all 20 every weekend.
But what we did do, and I don't know if it's in your notes, because it's worth you mentioning what you just, prospecting, nope. the Harris Tour of Homes?
Yes. No, that's not in this
So one of the things, that if you have a lot of listings, which some of you are blessed to have a lot of listings, copy this idea. We call it Harris Tour of Homes. And what we would do is we had corrugated signs that were made, and they would essentially say, open house, let's say 11 a.m. till noon. And then we'd put that one in front of the first house. And then we'd have a whole bunch of directional signs that would be pointing to the next house that was holding open. So imagine, well, again, some of you haven't been exposed to this because your communities, the builders haven't had to actually do this, but it was called like a tour of homes. And so what we do is we would lead them from one house we were holding open to the next one to the next one. So everyone would be open for an hour. And then you'd have essentially people that maybe you're holding 4 open on one day. Maybe the people only wanted to see the third one, and the third one is open from 1 till 2. Well, that's the only one they would go to. But the point being is that in these particular communities that we worked, there would be Harris Tour of Home signs open up every weekend, and they would be everywhere. If they weren't in front of the house actually saying what time that house was going to be open, the directional signs were everywhere. This got to be such a profitable thing for us to do that I'm telling you guys, when you drove through, it was New Albany where we did this a lot. When you drove through New Albany, you'd see our signs everywhere. It looked like every single listing for sale was our listing. We actually had a guy that would put all the directional signs out for us. He also worked for builders putting builder signs out, so we just had him put our signs out as well. And that did work extremely well. But to Julie's earlier point, what it really did is it differentiated us in the marketplace in the eyes of prospective sellers. Sellers are always going to be wondering, what the heck are you doing? Why am I paying you all this commission? What is it you're doing to actually get my house sold in the shortest period of time with the least amount of hassle and most net to me, right? And so by saying, and they've already experienced or seen what efforts we are going for, putting forth for the open houses, that in itself often would earn us the listing.
Yeah, and in fact, some of our coaching clients have spun this up even more with food trucks that follow
That's a great
around
idea.
and ice cream trucks in the summer, and they really take it to the next level. And we'll be talking about more of that in our future parts of this. So let's see. Back to the conversation. Sellers do expect you to do open houses. If you try and argue with them about that, you're going to lose most of the time. 1 out of 10 sellers might be weird about it. They have an extra level of privacy or whatever. Maybe some of them because of COVID still. But by and large, sellers expect this. Why is this? It's because they see it on HGTV, they see it on Bravo, they have the expectation, and because it's one of the only tangible things that they understand that you're actually doing.
Now, here's the deal with this, and I looked at your notes, there's not in there as well. Julie did say every seller will expect one, but doesn't necessarily mean every seller should get one, because the fact is, for example, if the seller's living in the house and they have a lot of cleanup, organizational issues, if they have a lot of pets. Yeah. Now, here's the irony of what I'm saying. In a normal market, that wouldn't be a good house to hold open because it looked a little bit like a house party house,
right?
Cat but house. In a house like this, where most markets, where essentially even a house that is under,
it's rough.
It's rough. There you go. That'll even sell with competing offers. But just a couple caveats. You got to be thinking through if the seller has medication in their, in their medicine cabinets and things like that, you've got to go through and tell the seller what to remove. And the best way to do it is if you're in a situation like that, walk around with the seller.
It's part of staging, really.
Yeah, it's part of staging, but walk around with the seller and make sure there's nothing that's easily palmable. It's not necessarily, people stealing, the drugs they'd steal. That is a very common thing. But sometimes people come with their kids, and people don't watch their kids, and kids are going where? The other kid's bedroom that happen to live in the house.
See what kind of toys they got.
And palming their toys, right? So you got to think through these types of things, and not just the best scenario is where it's an open house where the seller isn't there, as in the house is vacant. Those are obviously not something you can easily find in this market oftentimes, but just keep all these things in mind. Have these types of conversations with the sellers, again, and it's going to separate you from the pack because they're going to see you're a true professional.
Absolutely. So point number 5, open houses force you to be in front of people. Some of you guys are weird about that. That's why in the back of the Harris Rules book, we have the Introvert's Guide to Being a Real Estate Rockstar to help you with this. Well, guess what? Open houses are a great place for you to practice conversations, to practice being more social than you possibly might be on your own. And again, to our previous point, to make maximum contacts in minimum time. This is a great way for you to do that. So remember this saying, more contact equals more contracts. If you're not talking to people, you're probably not writing very many offers or listing contracts. More contact equals more contracts.
And what is a contact? A contact is not some passive lead generation thing or someone filled out a form. A contact is not if you send them a video and they watched it. A contact is a conversation with a decision-making adult, primarily about selling a home, but technically about buying or selling real estate. That is what a contact is. The more of those you have, the more of everything else you're going to have as a result. It's really that simple. And there are people everywhere that want to have those conversations with you. Just stop hiding behind your screens, because behind your screens are where you're not going to find real contacts. The people that are cleaning up in a market like this are doing it because they know every other agent is hiding behind their screens and not doing the real work of real estate, which is, essentially being in front of people. You got to remember what I just said. You are, being seduced into believing you don't have to do the real work of real estate. You will quickly fail out of this business. This business is absolutely ruthless for the agents right now that think they can build their business passively.
That's right. And I will never forget when you interviewed on our Superstar series, or one of the podcasts, Frederick Eklund, Selling New York. Most people know him. If not, you can Google him. But and he said, when you asked, it was a question about, talking about, having real estate conversations and real contacts. He said, Tim, anytime I walk out of my building, anybody I come across is thinking about real estate. They're thinking about buying. They're thinking about selling, thinking about leasing. They're thinking about investing. They have real estate on their mind, and it's my job to have that conversation with them. I thought that was a really good lesson.
It's a profound point, because if you don't think about it like that, right? You think about, only people that are in the market of selling or buying are the people that are interested in real estate. That's completely not true. It's because real estate is the one thing. I mean, there are other things too, right? But they're one thing that everybody needs. You always need to live in something, unless unfortunately you might be homeless. There are very few other products that are like that. Now here, I want you to think about this. Real estate has the other added benefit of every property, for the most part, being unique. So there are other things that people all need. And we'll just pick one just to make everyone laugh. Let's say toilet paper. But the thing is that most toilet paper, it's fungible. You might have your preferred brand, but the reality of it is it all does
basically
pretty much the same thing.
Basically all ends up in the same place.
Right, exactly, right. Doing the same thing.
Yeah.
But that's not true with real estate. Every house is different. Every condo is different. Every apartment is different. Every co-op is different. Everything is different. And so you are in a situation where you're selling something. You didn't realize how brilliant you were, or are, listeners. You're selling something that every single person you'll ever know will always need, and you're selling something that is not easily fungible. It's not, so it'll always require a salesperson, because every property is different. And there are no other industries like that. There are no, in any other business that you were to get into, you would have to look for the customer, and because not everyone's going to need, say, for example, Ginsu knives, or is going to need a new Chevrolet, whatever. Not everyone's going to need what other people have to sell, but everybody needs, and I was always curious about real estate. That's the extraordinary thing.
It's a beautiful thing.
It is. It's amazing.
And you don't have to own the inventory. How cool is that?
Yeah. I mean, Julie, what she just said, does that register with any of you? So if you wanted to open up a pie shop, let's say, and you wanted to open your, Julie and Zoe's pie shop, and they make great, they have 20 different pies. They bake the heck out of pies. What do they have to do? Think of what they have to do money-wise just to get it out of the ground. Think about what they have to do just to get people to want to walk in the front door. Think about what they have to do just to keep the lights on. They have to create everything, and it doesn't matter if it's a franchise or not. You have to then essentially have this recurring massive expense just to support the idea that you're going to make some sort of minimal margin on the product you're selling.
Which on top of that is perishable.
Exactly, right.
It's one thing after
But
another.
in real estate, you can get a real estate license, and you can go out and list other people's properties, of which you will then make a margin on, 6, 5, 4, whatever your percent is, and you have no recurring carrying costs like, say, Julie and Zoe's pie shop, right? There is no recurring carrying costs for you to have your real estate business open if you're doing it the way we prescribe or we suggest for all of you to do it, where you're not paying for a bunch of silly ass stuff. When you do it our way, your recurring expense is going to be virtually nothing, which is going to mean your profit margin from the commission checks you earn is going to be 90%, something like that, 85%, depending on your broker's commission splits. Speaking of which, I would be remiss in not reminding all of you that yes, of course, Julie and I are associated with eXp Realty, and yes, of course, Julie and I would love to talk with you about you joining our eXp Realty group. And it's very simple, and it's completely painless, and it might be kind of fun. Well, I don't know about fun, but
we try to make it fun.
You think it's fun? We'll find out. Text me directly at 512-758-0206. Text me directly at 512-758-0206. all of you are looking or should be considering upgrading your real estate broker. It's a perfect time of year to do it. If you're new in the business, text me at 512-758-0206. If you've been in the industry for a long time and you're ready for a broker upgrade, you know EXP, or it better be on your radar, text me at 512-758-0206. And of course, Julie and I would love to be your sponsors. So Julie, today is, what is today? Wednesday.
Yes.
Right? So all of these guys, and we're going to pick up where we left off tomorrow, tomorrow on this theme, on this topic. But all of them have a couple days, maybe 3.
Set up your open houses.
Set up open houses. And if you don't have listings, you can hold somebody else's house open with their permission. But do take this very, very seriously. Listen to what Mike did. He had 2 listings right out of the gates. Hold the heck out of them. Work the heck out of them. Think logically about what you're going to hold open. And as you're thinking about what you're going to hold open, and it doesn't necessarily have to be an agent with your brokerage either. Do consider what you're going to hold open. I'm going to give you guys some higher level thinking here. I would suggest, if you have the option to, not hold condos open. Why? Because generally speaking, they're going to be a pain in the butt to get to. There's probably going to be a gate. There's probably going to be a passcode.
And they're hard to find the unit too.
Right. There's probably going to be you guys make it super simple for you to get people to easily say, yes, I want to go to that open house. The best ones are going to be in that. Remember I talked about the 5 different tiers of housing? First-time home buyer is great, but you're going to get a lot of home buyers. You're not going to get prospective sellers, except maybe the neighbors, truthfully, which will work fine. If that's what you want to do, if you can hold one of those open, do it. But ideally, you want to work it in that move up price range of the first level or the second level. But here are some rules, and we're going to get to these tomorrow. But just as you're thinking through this, as you're thinking about
setting them up,
which you're going to hold open, don't hold anything. Hold something open that's easy to get to, that's not too buried back in a neighborhood. Don't hold something open that has something obviously objectionable about it. Power lines, busy road. Don't make it so people, follow your open house signs, all of a sudden see the house and see an immediate reason not to want to go in.
Keep driving.
That's what they'll do. And you'll see them looking out the window and you'll be depressed about it. So be strategic. Make sure when you actually do the open house, and again, we're going to be doing this tomorrow, there's nothing else in the driveway, including your car. Matter of fact, park your car across the way so you're not blocking your open house sign. Think strategically about all this, guys. If you don't have open house signs, go borrow them from somebody. If your open house signs have been sitting in your garage collecting dust, go wash them, right? Yeah. I mean, take this seriously, guys. It's spring.
But the house matters. I mean, you bring up a good point,
sure.
Because a lot of these guys listening are like, yeah, I tried open houses. I did one, whatever. And I didn't get anybody. You will find by tomorrow's podcast and the following why that might be. Maybe it had nothing to do with you. Maybe it did. Maybe you didn't have enough signs out. Maybe it was the house. I remember looking at stuff in different neighborhoods where it's like, 10 different signs up the side of a hill, down a back road, and like literally you could not find the house.
Yep.
I've seen other experiences where it was a windy day, like today here in Puerto Rico, and the agent did a killer job getting their signs out, but they all blew over and nobody knows what direction to go. So there are some very fine points that can make your open house really rock versus totally flop.
And we're going to get to all those finer points tomorrow. But in the meantime, your job is to go buy Harris Rules or listen to it. It's available on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, and every other bookstore you can imagine. And thanks, guys, for continuing to make Harris Rules a bestseller. Almost 500 5-star reviews on Amazon. Make sure you get Harris Rules ASAP. And your other homework assignment, obviously, is going to be deciding which house or houses you're going to hold open this weekend. It is a cash cow, simple opportunity, costs you nothing but your time. If you guys need us for anything, please text me directly at 512-758-0206, 512-758-0206. In the meantime, have a fantastic day, and we'll talk with you on the show tomorrow.
This program has been a presentation by Tim and Julie Harris, Real Estate Coaching. For more information on our real estate coaching and training programs, visit our website at timandjulieharris.com. Remember to tune in weekdays at noon for upcoming shows, and until next time, thank you for listening to Real Estate Coaching Radio with Tim and Julie Harris.
This podcast is a part of the C-Suite Radio Network. For more top business podcasts, visit c-suiteradio.com.